Hello there, I'm Callum and welcome to the EU in Review, where I review the Star Wars Expanded Universe as I experience it. And this time I'm going to be talking about the Star Wars Marvel annuals from back in, that were dotted throughout the original Marvel run, but because of the way that I read them afterwards. So that's the order I'm doing it in. It should be better with the Dark Horse comics because I'm going to go chronological with them. But yeah. So there's 3 annuals, and pretty much I'll do my spoiler-free section first and then go into my notes as I read it. So overall, I think these really just line up with the rest of the Marvel comics as far as the plot, dialogue, writing style, and visuals. And of course the continuity. And so you get those same sorts of some quirky ideas that seem like they're quite different version of Star Wars compared to what we know and what it's grown into through Dark Horse and novels. So in the visuals, I think are actually still reasonably good. Of course, the Dark Horse comics I think are better than the Marvel ones, at least from back the time these were made. Yeah, pretty much these are enjoyable, you can have fun with them, but I wouldn't say they're the best of the best, and that's what I'll say for the spoiler free section rather than going into detail about too many other things, because my detail is in the spoiler free section. So this is it. Annual number 1 is written by Chris Claremont, illustrated by Mike Vosberg and Steve Leialoha, and apparently they're guest artists, so that's cool. And so there's part 1, The Long Hunt, because these were broken up into different parts inside the annual. So going back to this is a little jarring, because I read the issues in number order for the Marvel run, and this takes place before issue 36. So it seems a little bit jarring that they wouldn't have it as part of the main run, even saying, oh, it's 35.5 or something. But yeah, that's me. Luke and Leia are in a bazaar and hoping they'll go unnoticed, but inevitably they get noticed, which is a bit like, yeah, you're Luke and Leia. It introduces the world of Tyrann. And I like the little fanboy naivety joke with the outfit is a little daring when Luke comments on Leia's outfit. And there's a female leader with green skin and wings from an unknown species, and they don't ever state it. But it seems like a female Stenax after reading some of the others, and that's what I can go with, even though they're different. And she's obsessed with hunting Han, which I found interesting, so it connects to Han more. And then it introduces Katja Mabuel, an old partner of Han's, which I think is cool. It's always cool, I think, when they bring back old things from Han's past and have a new story with them, because we learn more about Han throughout it as well. The way this great torrent of sky is building up, it seems like there would be a story of what happened with Han then. So I don't know if anyone's actually written a short story or anything for that, but there's a possibility of expanding upon that and telling that journey. I think it's interesting how they do a side of Chewie being hurt by Han not confiding in him, even though from what we know, the stuff released later on that Han didn't always trust Chewie. Of course they become good friends and everything, so there's that. And this introduces a smoke demon that absorbs Kate. Which I'm like, what? A smoke demon? And then somehow a lightsaber kills it. So it must have been made of energy and stuff. But Luke says that the creature was a creation in the Force. So I'm saying some early form, early as in release date order, early form of Sith alchemy, possibly. And I thought, damn, Luke is in shock from the demon's screams that will echo in his head until he dies. Even though no mention of it ever again. You'd think he'd do something about that, right? And Han is devastated that he's lost a lover in Katja, which is interesting. So she was actually brought in as a possible romantic interest for Han. And then, Han goes into the backstory of what happened, introducing a new planet called Marat 5. And it turns out that the winged female's name is Karis, the Magistrix, as she's referred to earlier. So she's called the Magistrix, the winged female. And the Falcon is shot down mostly as they are surprised by Karis, and how she saw them coming and planned an ambush, which I thought was interesting. Having Luke out of action after the smoke demon is nice, and not have the super powerful Luke swings in and saves the day to deal with everything. And Han and Chewie supposedly sacrificed themselves to save Luke and Leia. And I thought it's interesting how the people call themselves Skytree. They do remind me a lot with how the Stanxes look, but Skytree actually made me think of the 100, which I've watched some of the TV show of, because there's Sky Crew and that. No, they're called Skytree. And they think that humans, even being on their planet, profanes their sacred place, which reminds me of some areas in real life where people think that, which is interesting. And part 2 is A Duel of Eagles. Luke and Leia are taken to trial for just landing on the planet, really, and they pull out an Imperial warrant on paper. And they repeat that the art doesn't look a lot like the real life actors I found in this, as well as that. That's the thing of the Marvel comics, is that the art doesn't look as much like the real life actors. It's interesting that the Skytree work out that Luke is the one with the same last name as their wingless blood brother. And so it's actually them referring to Anakin Skywalker, which it would have been awesome to have an Anakin story on Marat 5 at one point. Because apparently Anakin helped them, and then Luke's come back and he's the one. Karis mentions that she is in control of the smoke demon while talking to a captured Han, which is interesting. And it shows Leia and Luke in wingsuits, which I thought was interesting because they added wingsuits into it. And I like how they strafe the stormtroopers from their gliding position. So they get the wingsuits and they swoop over the top and strafe like a orbital bombardment sort of thing. They strafe them while they're flying, which is a good use of the wingsuits. And it shows what we assume is part of what also happened to Leia in A New Hope, which is interesting, with part of the torture and stuff. Which I like how they expanded upon that. And it's interesting how Karis has a lightsaber and uses it proficiently along with the claws on her feet. So this adds an interesting villain for Luke to fight with a lightsaber, basically. And there seems to be an early form of battle meditation, early form by release date again, by Karis using the Force to dull Luke's thinking, which I thought was really cool. How it went, oh, this is when they're starting to think of different ways of the Force can be used, and so this is an early concept that developed into battle meditation. And of course, she's a villain. She relies on that power too much, and it was her downfall. And it was interesting that they revealed that Darth Vader, as he was then, had helped Sky under Obi-Wan, then returned and made it an Imperial satrapy. Which I thought was interesting because that's a bit like what happened on Honog with the Nograi. And it's nice how the ending has Luke seeing his father as a good person, even though later it would be that he didn't realise Vader was the Anakin who had helped them separately in the past. But I like how they all sort of connect together, because like Vader helped them, but it must have been him as Anakin, and then he returned and used that to turn it into an Imperial satrapy, which is interesting. Annual number 2 is titled Shade Shine, and it's written by David Michelini and illustrated by Callum Infantino. It specifies 1982, and it's set before issue 58 and after issue 64 timeline. That's why it's easier to read them in chronological order, probably. Anyway, it introduces Ventuine, which is another Oeen planet. They like those names. Now, after a power source, which is a pretty standard MacGuffin, really. And there's a statue of Han, which you wouldn't expect, and it's funny that they'd made a statue of him. It's interesting enough plot that Han helped a planet while they were searching for a weapon power source. And I thought it was an interesting story for Han, how he went and then got himself entwined in the planet's politics by searching for spies. And it's also cool how the Shade Shrine heightens senses, even some into transmitters as well as receivers. So they have the part where, okay, cool, your voice can go out and, well, that's not the best example, but they explain it in the annual that basically the sensors where you're feeling touch, you can also send out touch sensors and that sort of thing, which is cool. Clodget seems to be a different species that I don't really know. And it's interesting how the Satab uses the Shade Shrine's power to actually stay in power, really. And that's the symbol of their power, so it's cool. The ending of Han's little tale, I think, really does show his good-natured side, with him blasting the Shade Shrine so no one can use it. Which, it goes to show he's the reluctant hero compared to more of a scoundrel side. And they end up evading the stormtroopers by using the stasis chamber, which I think is a cool bit at the end. And also it ends with them leaving in a Y-wing, which I thought was interesting as well. And annual number 3 is The Apprentice, which is written by Mary Jo Duffy and illustrated by Klaus Janson. This is set after issue 80. And Vader has someone polishing his boots as he speaks, which I thought was funny. The crowd on Belderon, with Luke, Lando, Leia and Chewie landing there, has some funny dialogue. And it follows the story of Barney and Flint introducing this more, compared to like Luke, Lando, Leia and Chewie. Belderon, being an Imperial world, pushes the plot forwards pretty good when an imp figures out who they are not long after landing, which makes sense. And I thought, what even is with Chewie's face in one panel? Like, they show it and it's just really weird. The surviving assassin committed suicide instead of being captured, which is interesting. And Vader telling off Admiral Andred is classic Vader, as is the Force choke afterwards. The reactions of the servant are humorous, and Luke zooms off quickly. It almost seems like they skip some panels. There is some pretty cool art of the AT-ATs in this comic though. The X-Wings seem just plain wrong designs. And of course they use the tow cable trick again to take down the AT-ATs. There's cool art of the walker falling and exploding. And there's some nice foreshadowing earlier with Flint. His mother said he'll crash one day, and at an important moment, he does. And I thought it was funny that an X-Wing lands on an AT-AT, and it just so happens that Lando and Leia took over the AT-AT. And it's nice that Luke gets to take another one over by breaking the transperistyle with his lightsaber. The thing is, they call X-Wings planes in this comic, which is weird. But I like how Vader finds Flint and sees the potential to take him in as an Inquisitor, as I see it. Like, Vader finds Flint and says, I'll train you to have this power. So that's basically saying he'll make him an Inquisitor. And it starts him off as a Stormtrooper, interestingly. It must be basic indoctrination, amongst other things Vader wants Flint to be conditioned to do. And basically that's that. So, yeah, it's the same line as the original Marvel comics in that there's some cool stories, but there's also some doozies, and you remember that these are older and they may not line up as good. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video. Over.